Welcome to the Spanish Preterite Notes. When we're talking in Spanish, there's two simple past tenses that you can use. In Spanish, these tenses are called the preterite and the imperfect. And for the purpose of these notes, we are going to be focusing just on the preterite. And for the purpose of these notes, or this section, we are looking at only regular preterite verbs. So we're not looking at any irregulars. The preterite tense is used to express actions that started and stopped at a specific time in the past. And it's this word right here, specific. We can actually mark in time when the action started and when it stopped. So when you're conjugating regular verbs in the preterite, the stem does not change. And we've spent a lot of time talking about stem changing verbs, about irregular verbs. When we're focusing on just the regular preterite, the stem does not change. The nosotros form, or the 1PP box, is the same in the preterite and the present tense for both AR and IR verbs. This means that we need to use context clues in order to determine the meaning. And we'll look at a few examples and see what this means. The first thing we need to know is what our regular preterite endings are. So we have our regular preterite endings divided into AR verbs and then ER and IR verbs. Our AR endings are as follows. The letter E with an accent mark on it, pronounced A. Aste. And then the letter O with an accent mark on it, O. So we have A, aste, O on the singular side. And then over on the plural side, we have amos, astes, and eron. An easy way to remember the astes is it's exactly the same aste as second person singular. You just add is to the end. The other thing that you're going to need to pay attention to or remember is that the first person singular and the third person singular both have accent marks. So we have aste, o, amos, astes, eron. This is a good time to pause the video, star, highlight, practice this information. So then when it comes to the ER and IR verbs in the preterite, it's awesome because these verbs are going to have the exact same endings. So the ER endings are as follows. The letter I with an accent mark, pronounced E. Then we have iste. Then we have io. And there's an accent mark over the O. Then over here on the plural side, we have emos, istes, and once again, we have our iste plus our is. So that's a really easy way to remember the spelling on this. And then the last box is our ieron. So we have iste, yo, imos, istes, ieron. Also worth noting that the first person singular and third person singular both have accent marks on them. And down here it says note the accent marks on the 1PS and 3PS forms. So very important to remember those accent marks. Okay, moving forward on these notes, let's do a couple practices. And this would be a great time for you to pause the video and try these on your own. So the first one we're going to talk about is hablar. We should know by now that hablar means to talk. And when we're conjugating verbs in the preterite, we're going to have the same three steps. Step 1 is starting with the infinitive. Step 2 is dropping the ending. And then step 3 is adding the new ending. So my stem for hablar is able. I can go through and just put able in all 6 boxes. And then I'm going to scroll back up on my notes. This is a really important part to memorize. I'm using these AR endings right here. So I can go back down and I can add those endings to the end. So I have hablé, don't forget that accent mark, hablaste, habló, hablamos, hablastes, and hablaron. And then finally, we need to take a look at what each of these means. So hablé would be I talked, or sometimes you'll see I used to talk, but we're just going to go with I talked. Hablaste is the you talked. Remember, that's the informal you, the tú hablaste. Habló is going to be she talked. Remember, she talked, he talked, it talked, you talked. Hablamos, this is what we talked about earlier. In the present tense, we would have hablamos for first person plural, and hablamos also in the preterite tense, and in this case, it means I talked. So definitely an opportunity to use context clues. Hablasteis, we're going to Spain, and this is you all talked. And up here, sorry, I put we talked. And then down here, hablaron is going to be they / you all everywhere talked. All right, so there's a conjugation of a regular AR verb in the preterite. All of your regular AR verbs are going to follow this exact same form. Now we're going to quickly do the same thing with an ER and an IR verb. So we have comer, which we know means to eat. Our stem of the verb is com. And we checked, we know it's an ER verb, so we're going to use our ER endings that we had from up above. So if I scroll back up, I have my ER and IR endings. These are the endings I'm working with. So I'm going to have comí, comiste, comió, comimos, comistes, and comieron. Now, since comer is to eat, in the past it's going to be I ate, you ate, she ate, he ate, it ate, you ate, we ate, you all ate, and they / you all ate. Subir, we're going to follow the same endings. Subir has lots of meanings: to climb, to lift, to go up, to raise. We're just going to go with to climb, knowing that it can mean some other things, but we're not going to write all of that in there. So subir is going to be sub as our stem. And then we're going to go ahead and add our new endings. And remember, these are our ER-IR endings. So I have subí, subiste, subió, subimos. This is the same as the present tense. So that emos is the same. You just have to use context clues. Then we have subistes and subieron. And since we decided that climb was the definition we're going to work with, it would be I climbed, you climbed, she climbed, we climbed, you all climbed, and then they / you all climbed. All right, I want you to pause the video at this time and go ahead and give these 10 sentences a practice. In the next video, we will go over these 10 sentences.